Hello and welcome to another episode of Steelfur Speaks with, of course, me, Steelfur, London-based Flesh and Blood player. What's new in the world of Flesh and Blood today? Well, obviously, I can start off just by saying, partly due to the preview, thanks again to LSS for giving me that preview, the Mask of the Pouncing Lynx card. I have actually gone over 1,000 subscribers, which is really just amazing. I didn't picture that I would get that many. Certainly not just in the short sort of less than a year that I've been putting out videos. So thank you everyone who is a subscriber. To those of you who want, if you enjoy this content and want to get updates and things like that, and make the YouTube algorithm even happier with me, please do hit like and subscribe. That would be really great. Anyway, so the news in Flesh and Blood, I guess, is what we're kind of focusing on. There's been just so much happening. Obviously, we've got Everfest coming out tomorrow where I am, depending on when you're listening to this. Probably already out. Lots of people are already opening boxes and opening fables. It does seem that rare Bravo cold foil is almost as rare as the fabled, which is a pretty big deal. Just to talk about Everfest a bit, it seems that the set is a bit, it's kind of eliciting mixed responses. There's a lot of potions, most of which I would say fall under sort of a silver bullet card design where they're tailored to either bolster or interact with or stop a very specific strategy. Most of those aren't really landing as hits now, but equally you can imagine that you might need a talisman of cremation or something like that when a specific strategy of graveyard recursion or something like that gets to be like really problematic. But for the moment, a lot of these cards really just aren't going to see play so much unless people come up with really creative ways to use them. We're starting to see stuff like the resource ones like Ignition and Recompense are probably going to get to see play because resources are very, very important. We might see stuff like Potion of Luck seeing play because card draw is very, very important, and having a Hope Merchant's Hood on the table without sacrificing, without having to sacrifice your armor or your headpiece is actually quite useful as well. Especially when combined with things like the new Bravo, the new Guardian chess piece. So I think that some of the potions will have a lot of reach, shall we say. Others are not going to until there's something in the meta that we need them to do. Because a lot of them have very niche things. Like Amulet of Haven's Call gets you Rally the Rearguard, which technically, if Prism is smashing your meta, could actually be quite useful. You block loads of phantasms with all the cards in your hand, and then you go and get another 6-cost card that can destroy another phantasm. If that's what's happening, then maybe that's good. Otherwise, it just gets you an extra 2 block. Arguably, the only real deck that it's actually very good in is if you're blocking out a full turn with Ultim. You can, of course, Crown of Seeds as an instant, and then trigger Amulet of Haven's Call to go and fetch Rally the Rearguard. Then draw your card from Crown of Seeds. And then, you will get to trigger both abilities, discard the card to block, and then get a 5 defense card as kind of like your last stand block, which, could be good if Ultim is fighting off these huge swings from, say, Bravo, for example. It might be an interesting sideboard choice, but we're going to have to see where a lot of these potions and talismans land. People are also interestingly reacting to the idea that these are also cold foil. There are apparently 30 different cold foils in the set, all of which come in this carnival slot that is a potion or a cold foil or something. But your only cold foil per box could be one of these potions. And if it's one that's a bit kooky or a bit weird, not going to see play, that can feel a bit bad. Just some people have reported it. The other thing that feels bad, from opening the set from people that I've heard, is the Majestic Heroes. Now, when I saw the Majestic Heroes originally, I did say this is probably a miss. Heroes really should never be rare or majestic. So I'm assuming the logic behind putting these heroes in at Majestic is so that they don't show up all the time. So your rare slots aren't taken over by these heroes, as we saw in Crucible, where you're getting loads of these heroes coming out, to make them a bit harder to find, a bit spicier. The problem with it is that none of the heroes are going to be particularly high in demand because they're all Blitz heroes, except Bravo, and we'll talk about Bravo in a second. But also, there's a negative impact on you when you open multiple of these cards. So, you're going to open two Icelanders if you open a box or two, you know, and then you're going to be like, well, what do I do with this other Majestic? And if no one wants to buy it from you or trade it from you, you're just left with this unique Majestic you can't play. So it's kind of the same problem with opening one of the legendary rares from Monarch, where you just had a pile of these legendary rares and you can't play more than one of them in the deck, and they kind of just build up and you don't really have much to do with them. The same reason that the the shuffle deck legendaries and things like that aren't that popular. You only need one. They're not a premium card, right? So we're having sort of the same problem with the heroes, is that it feels okay to open one of them, and they are short printed. So when you open a box, you shouldn't expect to open tons and tons of heroes. You should expect to open a few here and there, but it still doesn't necessarily feel great opening, your Majestics of a box. You get 8 Majestics in a box. If 2 or 3 of them are heroes and you've already got those heroes, and that's actually going to feel like a pretty rough box opening. So I think that's a bit of a miss. I maintain my original thoughts about heroes, which is that heroes should only ever be printed as a token rarity. They should be incredibly easy to get a hold of. They should never be the chase card in the set, though again we'll talk about Bravo in a second. But you should just be able to easily get any hero, and you should be able to basically build a deck with a token, any hero. So getting the hero isn't the problem. If you want to bling it out, that's the problem. But you can build any deck even with token heroes, and you don't have to worry about chasing a Majestic or a legendary like Shiana. The exception, I mean, it's kind of okay for an adult hero who you already have options for to be printed as a Majestic with a different ability. But again, if Bravo Star of the Show proves to be the best Bravo, every Bravo player is going to want one. Suddenly that Majestic becomes quite hard to find, especially because it's short printed. And you have this problem where people who are new players trying to become Bravo players, Star of the Show players, can't get one. So we'll have to see what happens that way. Though I do quite like, and this is where the Bravo discussion kind of comes full circle, I am really in favour of them including this full art double-sided gold foil Bravo. I think stuff like that is actually really, really nice. Rare enough to make it a collector's and chase piece, something that Bravo players are going to like. We'll say done well in terms of tasteful art, having that full art option with the rules text on the back so you can play the full art option in your game, and then having it being cold foil and detailed in a way that makes people really want it. All of those things make that an exciting card to open, to trade with. It's going to be desirable, even if it's not powerful, which it will be powerful because it has one of the biggest card pools in the game. But even if it's not powerful, it will still be incredibly in demand, which I think is one of the main things that LSS should be shooting for in new sets, is creating these unique but not like gameplay unique items. Remember, library is a mistake because it's a fabled and very hard to get, while also being good enough to see play in a meta deck. Whereas the gems are unique and good, but not so good that you need to get them. So it's okay for those to be there. So we're talking about non-gameplay unique items, so you don't have the problem with fables where you might design something really powerful and then have a problem where it's really hard to get a hold of. With the special art or alt art and stuff like that, makes boosters really exciting to open, because if you pull one of those hits and they're kind of rare, then you get something spicy. And you can see that they try to do that a bit as well with the extended art rares and Majestics that are also in the set. Those are a bit trickier because the problem with them is that the text box is a little bit more see-through, but it's not really that more see-through, so it doesn't really get you super excited when you open one. They look all right. In foil, they look quite good. But it's not like... sorry, no idea where that came from. It's not like they're, revolutionary. Some people will put a lot of value in them. We'll have to kind of see how they plan out. I know a lot of people just want to get their 100 wins. They don't really care if their Wins of Eternity is extended art, etc., etc. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But there is at least the intention of creating lots of interesting little bits of things to open in this set. I feel like the number of potions and generics is kind of putting people off a little bit. And the other thing, of course, we want to talk about, we're talking about Everfest. And obviously, I'm going to do a more in-depth review video in terms of what classes gained what. I've also had a request for like a Where Does Ninja Stand After Everfest video, which I will be doing later on this weekend. But really, there is this thing where, we've got a lot of classes have gotten support for their Blitz Crucible of War hero, right? And it's hard to look past that. The classes that didn't have a crew hero didn't get blitz focused support in this set. The classes that did pretty much exclusively got blitz focused support in this set. And I'm talking about obviously Kasai, Benji, and Data Doll and KO. So all of the ninja cards focus on 2 or less power. Most of them are 2 or less power attacks. 100 wins combo chain is pretty much one of the few exceptions, as well as twin twisters, which just work regardless of the power of the attack, but they are still quite small attacks, which is an interesting avenue to go down, but not really one that I feel has been super rewarded. The Torrent of Tempo line is bad, but easier to pull off, I feel like, in Benji than in Katsu, because you can guarantee something like Rushing River hits. But equally, Katsu can go search for his Flood of Forces, his Rising Tide, so that combo line could work for Katsu now. But my point is that those heroes who had a Crucible hero did get a lot of blitz support, and those ones that didn't are going to be the real winners out of this set. So there's a reason that all of the content creators, myself included, are predicting that Runeblade Guardian and Prism are all going to be the winners from this set, because those are the ones who really got support for what I'll call their CC themes compared to the other classes like Brute, Ninja, Warrior. Warriors cards are very flexible for different weapons. I mean, there's talk of axes, Dorinthia, and things like that going around. We'll have to see how it works out. And of course, KO and Datadol getting support for their themes as well. So it's kind of tricky to see sort of where the meta is going to come. And Flake recently did his interview, which we'll get back to again later, with James White, and he asked for questions. And my question was, what is your logic as a designer for sitting down and assumedly your test team, hopefully, has told you, okay, at the end of TOA, we expect, Viserai is going to be good, Briar's going to be good, Bravo's going to be good, Oldham's going to be good, Prism is going to be good, right? Assumedly your design team, your testing team is figuring out some of these decks and giving you a good idea of what the meta is going to be when you move to design the supplemental set. And in the face of that, what is the logic of saying, and this is what I like saying, okay, we're only going to support these classes with like good CC cards, but let's put in all this stuff for like KO and Benji, etc., into the other classes. So if your testing team is giving you accurate data, that's a big if, right? We've talked about this before, whether or not the Flesh and Blood testing team is up to scratch and is giving James White and the design team the right feedback they need, whether it needs to be bulked up and all this kind of things. But if your testing team is doing the work and finding some of these decks, maybe not all of them, but some of them, and giving you an idea of the meta, which is Oldhim, Viserai, Bravo, Prism, right? Bit of Briar as well. You're sitting there thinking, okay, well, in this supplemental set, we're going to see a new Guardian, two new Guardians, technically, lots of support for Guardian CC in terms of auras that benefit their CC defensive strategy, a few nice big attacks like Macho Grande that benefit their aggressive strategy. Prism's going to get more auras, cards that copy auras, cards that give you rewards if your opponent blows them up, so you get win either way. And Runeblade's going to get really strong rune chant generation, 4 rune chants for free, more go again for free if you fulfill the condition, a really big attack for eating Prism's auras, loads of different tools to support it. What is your then design logic for saying, okay, give those cards support and give the other guys the blitz? Because it doesn't make sense to me. So when Flake was doing his interview, I put that down as my question. He didn't ask James White, probably because my question is probably a bit more antagonistic. Though I will say that of all the interviews in my mind that James White has done so far, the Flake interview was by far the best. He asked a lot of reasonably hard-hitting questions about the direction of Fab, design goals, hero goals, things like shipping, tournaments, stuff that, James White had to answer and answered, I would say, quite well. And I don't know how much those questions were agreed in advance. They did kind of seem like they were pre-approved, or at least pre-passed, maybe, or pre-discussed. But I will say that, James White at this stage in the game needed to show that he was capable and sort of in charge and responsible of answering those questions. Stuff like what is happening with bans? How do you think about Living Legend? What's happening with these events? What was your plan for, that hero? Those kind of questions he has to be engaged with. How did your playtesting team let Duskblade through? Those are the kind of questions he needs to be answering on a regular basis, and answering we'll say coherently. But he also needs to be answering questions about the design direction of the game when certain classes, which are people's favorites, don't get support compared to other classes that are already winning the meta. Because that is either a plan, which is fine, like you can be like, okay, 2022 is going to continue to be the year of the Runeblade, the Guardian, and the Illusionist, because they're really nicely balanced against each other, and we like that. But you obviously have trouble because saying that makes all the brute players go, what the hell, dude? Not saying it still makes them go, what the hell, dude? So having an active conversation about, well, we're going to focus on these heroes for now, we'll build up those guys. Like, for example, if he says, well, Ninja didn't get that much support because, or some sort of hint, because we're seeing them in a set later on this year where we think that set is going to bring them up to the same level of competitive viability, right? That's the sort of discussion which a lot of players are waiting for, and hoping to see some sort of understanding of, because I think it's very, very important when you're really invested in a hero, in a meta, in sort of iconography and lore and feel of Wraith and the classes, that you're not just always going to be subject to the meta. And we've seen a lot of people not wanting to be subject to the meta, to the extent that they have said, I'm just going to play this one hero regardless of whether they're good or not. I think you need to give those people reasons to stick around, and reasons to stick around on those heroes they want to play, which isn't just, well, we're supporting this KO theme now. It's a roadmap for, like, for example, picture Everfest with the Crucible adult hero versions in. Now, I personally don't want KO anywhere near CC. I think it's too many rounds for KO to roll well and just win the game. I don't want that to happen. But compare the amount of excitement that would be in the set now in Ninja, Brute, Guardian, not Ninja, Brute, Guardian, Ninja, Brute, Runeblade Warrior, not Runeblade, oh, forgive me, Mechanologist and Warrior, if there was an adult version of all those Crucible heroes now who could take all of these new cards they've given and start deploying them in a CC format. I know the Benji players would certainly be happy. I know that Kasai players would 100% be happy. The other two, less certain on, but there's definitely room and scope for those cards to then be used in competitive tournaments. Now, I will say this, so let's just talk about the meta as things currently stand and how that is going to progress for the rest of the year, because that's important to this discussion. So just before Everfest came out, we have a Guardian heavy, Runeblade heavy meta with Prism kicking around as well. Everfest not changing that too much going into the ProQuest season, so that all the people who've acquired those cards, the Guardian, Runeblade, Illusionist cards, can keep playing their class and diversify the decks they currently have, and continue to develop and hone the skills they've been working on for the past few months with Tales of Aria since the bans, isn't necessarily a bad decision, right? For the very simple reason that the ProQuest season is going to be a month to 2 months long, finishing up near the end of, I think, end of March, early March. Then we're going to go into, right after the ProQuest season, Blitz, probably, we get a battle hardened in the UK. We're also, the gem stores, some of them have told me they already have their skirmish season 4. If they've been assigned one on gem, though they can't book it, they haven't got details about it yet, but that's going to be Blitz as well. So we are going to go in from 1 to 2 months of CC where we'll be playing the same meta, but with upgraded tools, which does feel fun for the people who have embraced the classes that are meta, into a more Blitz-focused season where all of these Blitz cards will be played. And then shortly after that, kind of wrapping up with May, which is the... we'll talk about this as well, the new Pro Tour in New Jersey, which will be the last constructed, I think, big constructed event of this season. And then we'll move into June and July. And I think in June, we're scheduled to get the next big set reveal, draft set, main set, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing that the meta is not going to change so much in terms of like the heroes played for a month, because a lot of people are being rewarded now for sticking around. And if that was the plan, and if that was articulated to us, well, we designed things this way because obviously there's a big blitz season coming up, which we want to use to get lots of new players in. And also we want to make sure the people who have been, loyal to the heroes that are in the meta at the moment don't just feel like everything's cut loose just before the Pro Quest. We want to give them some new toys, but keep the meta relatively the same until we go into the new set we go into Blitz, and then we go into the new set in June, which is going to really shake things up because we're getting adult heroes you haven't seen before who are going to be really, really good, and they're going to come in and compete with the top dogs now and really shake up the meta, right? If that's articulated to us as the plan or the idea, I think it makes a lot more sense. As it is currently, a lot of people who were hoping that Everfest would bring the spice they needed to take their favorite hero who wasn't in the meta before, because remember, it's a supplemental set, so we were kind of promised cards for everyone, not Blitz cards for some people and CC cards for others. And if, some people were holding out hope that Everfest was going to be the set that would let them bring, Rhynar or Levia, or, think of all of this like tier 2 characters, Dorinthia come back in, Katsu come back in, was hoping that this would be the set that would give them the tools to enter the meta again and compete with the Oldhams, the Briars, the Bravos, the Prisms, the Viserais of the meta. It hasn't worked out that way, and there are pros and cons as articulated, but, I feel like those people needed a bit more of a clear message as to why these choices have been made, which I don't think was covered by the Flake interview. And I don't think people, I think one or two people from LSS occasionally watch my channel because they've said it to me, which is good. But, if James White wants to come on here or pre-record a 5-minute video I can play before the next Steelfur Speaks as to, explaining the logic behind some of the decisions that went into Everfest and giving certain people support for their main deck while others got support for a side deck or a blitz deck, I would really like that, and I think the community would really benefit from it. But, we'll see if that happens. I have 1,000 subscribers now. That's apparently clout. I got a preview, so, maybe I can get that question answered. Who knows? Moving on from that, I think, so this Flake interview I keep referring to, I really would give it a watch. I think it's brilliant. But it refers to, in it, James White said very clearly that in his mind, Fab Phase 2 is coming in this year and is going to be announced in the next month or so. And that was a very interesting bit because he was talking about First Edition and Unlimited and the problem with First Edition being drastically overpriced, so people couldn't get the cards to play with, and how that annoyed him a lot because the game is for playing and he wants that to get into people's hands and for them to play with it. So he was getting visually quite frustrated and articulating his frustration well, explaining basically his problem with the whole First Unlimited divide in terms of how it, in terms of how it affects people actually getting cards to play the game, which is his main focus as a designer. He kind of basically said collectors are all well and good and we want to keep giving them interesting stuff, hence the new Bravo, the double-sided cold foil, etc. But that if people can't get the game to play, the game is, what's the point of having a game? And he's completely right. Flesh and Blood needs to grow naturally and organically, which it can only do if cards are reasonably priced. However, in that statement, you do have to kind of ask, like, what's happening with CNC, E-Strike, all those cards from the out-of-print sets that are currently over $100 a card to get a play set. Talisman of the Talisman that destroys two arsenals is not replacing Command and Conquer. And a lot of people were looking to Everfest to reprint, myself included, staples like that because the cost of those staples needs to come down or the card needs to be banned so that people can't play with it because it's not a level playing field. Because we got that Pro Tour coming up, and if there's a person who wants to go to that Pro Tour and they win a qualifier at their Pro Quest playing a deck that doesn't need CC, but then CC is so relevant for the meta they need it to compete at the Pro Tour, they either have to drop $300 on it, or they can't play the card. They're probably going to lose because they don't have that card. I'm overstating a little bit, but there are certain matchups, like, say, Viserai, where arsenaling a Sonata Arcanix and then being threatened with a CNC is actually really, really painful. And if you can't threaten my Sonata in Arsenal, I'm going to leave it there until I have, like, 20 tokens, and then I'm going to pop it, and it's just going to have been saved there the entire game. If I think you're running loads of CNCs, it becomes a bit trickier because I have to defend it, I have to watch for pummels, I have to overblock. There's loads of other stuff that goes on, basically making sure that my Sonata's safe. So, it becomes a more interesting discussion. So we do have to kind of wonder what this phase 2 then means. I mean, it could mean a lot of things. Some people are speculating there'll be a revised version of the game coming out, which will include sort of, like reprints of cards from WTR and Arcane Rising. Starter decks featuring the original heroes containing Majestic staples. Some people are suggesting it's sort of like a PvE set, which again would make sense in terms of PvE starter decks that contain key reprints so that people want to buy them, but also, it's an option for other people to get them to play with if they haven't got the cards already. Lots of those things could be very exciting, I think. And we still do have this big question mark product. It's just, is this PvE? We've got all these characters like Valda, the Merchant, Cavdane. There's loads of characters who work really, really well in a PvE setting. So a lot of people are kind of speculating that this PvE is coming, and that one of the things that Everfest had to do was basically set up a lot of the PvE. And I will say this, a lot of the potions and their niche silver bullet effects, right, think about this, work much better in a PvE environment, because it is likely that one of the bosses or arch enemies or whatever they're called in a PvE environment will have a mechanic that focuses around that, which the potion lets you deal with. Also, thematically, an adventuring party going to an alchemist loading up on potions before going to fight the big dragon, for example, makes an awful lot of sense. So again, I'm kind of like putting things out there. The Everfest seems like it had quite a few things to do. It had to maintain the current meta in terms of heroes so that people could continue to develop their skills and not feel like they have to do a huge pivot, which I think is important somewhat. Though I think a lot of people would say it would have been more exciting if there was more pivot cards included. It had to fill in several gaps left in the game by cards like Plunder Run, Ball Lightning, though there were no Lightning cards in this set, which I think shocked a lot of people, but that is what it is. And I feel like it also had to lay the seeds for PvE, which a lot of people are speculating is coming in Q2 2022. And I personally, I'm on the bandwagon with that. I think 100% it's coming in Q2 2022. It just seems to me, if you read the way that Merchant is phrased, if you read the way that Valda is phrased, it just seems like there's going to be a PvE sort of thing where everyone is at the Everfest Carnival, they're chilling out, they're buying potions, they're having a party, they're drawing cards for each other, they're coaxing commotions with each other, and then this big bad's going to come along, and you have to take the tools that you got from the carnival and fight off that big baddie, right? And that kind of seems like the way that PvE is going to go, probably maybe a Marvel Champions style of game where it's 3 versus 1 or 3 versus the AI. 3 versus 1 is usually much better, but, it is what it is. And then we're getting our new standalone booster set. Early predictions with no sort of weight behind them. James White did say that Volcor was his most, the region he'd like to visit the most, but I have a feeling that this booster set will be Mysteria and Volcor. I feel like Ninja is long overdue. Now, we could see like a Mech Ninja. We could go to Metrics and see like a Mech Ninja, or the Pits and see like a Shadow Ninja. But my prediction is that we're going to go to Mysteria and Volcor. We're going to get a new Wizard. We're going to get a new Ninja, a new Warrior. We're going to get Adult Kasai probably, or someone from Kasai's faction. We're going to get Adult Benji or someone from the Sparrow clan. And then we're going to get a new Wizard and maybe a Bard. Or he did say there was a class that he'd been working on New Year's Eve, watching everyone having a party, and then he came up with this class. So that to me sounds like a Bard or something that we're going to get in that as well. So we'll see if those predictions come true, but I guess that's kind of it. The other thing, of course, just to talk about, so Fab 2.0, I mean, that's quite exciting. But the other thing to sort of talk about is the event schedule. I think this is really exciting. Obviously, we have the announcement of the Pro Tour #1, Pro Tour New Jersey. I can say with some certainty. I mean, I'm just waiting for it to be confirmed. Someone has given me a PTI because I haven't yet had a chance to win one. I mean, so I had options, and I still have options to get my own PTI. I, I'm going to 5 Pro Quests, and I'm also 136 on the lifetime top 100 leaderboard. And I was originally just planning to grind that out, try and get 100 games in. In London, I can go to 3 or 4 armories a week fairly easily. But I really want to go to this Pro Tour. It's the first one in the game. Obviously, great content for the channel. I don't expect they'd ask me to cast this because I have a feeling it will be a North American casting team. If they did, I would do it. But, the point is that I think this will be really fun to go to. As kind of like a big milestone in Flesh and Blood and do a lot of work on, and hopefully, do reasonably well at. Obviously, it's going to be very, very stiff competition, but, I'm not bad at the game, and I think I have a chance to perform reasonably well if I practice a lot. The grind, though, was really starting to bother me, so I did reach out to see if there was a way I could get a PTI from someone. And I will say that, by making the PTIs giftable, and there is a kind of discussion with this, they have opened up a secondary market we've seen develop for the PTIs, where anyone who's got one but doesn't live in a place where they want to travel, like say, traveling out of Poland or some of the Southeast Asian countries can be very, very expensive to get to America. The UK is kind of fine because you get that really quick flight from London to the East Coast. But for like Polish people or people from like the Czech Republic and people like that, it can be really, really expensive to get a flight to America. So a lot of, I've been speaking to some people from the Polish scene, and they don't think they're ever going to go to a PTI in America, a Pro Tour in America. They're not going to probably go to Worlds. So they were kind of happy to, sell their PTI for an amount of money to, I talked to a few of them about buying it, etc. A few other people I've seen have asked to buy one. There is a bit of a debate as to how much a PTI is worth. Now, when I was speaking to people, I've always pitched it as basically, you've won the raffle for a concert ticket, you don't want to go, therefore this PTI is worth, the power cable has fallen out of something. That's exciting. Therefore, this PTI is worth, what you would pay to go to a good concert, right? It's worth about £100, right? Because that's what I would pay to buy a second-hand concert ticket that someone won in a raffle. Unless it was like for, One Direction or one of those really big super bands like BTS or something like that, then I would expect to pay a lot more for something like that. But we're talking about a new game, its first event, obviously going to be huge. There's a lot of hype. But how much is a PTI to go to that event actually worth? I started at £100. Someone came back and said, ridiculous, this is worth at least £1,000 US. I don't really see this being worth £1,000 to attend. The price support is good, but the price support isn't particularly amazing unless you make day 2. You get that 64th. And even if you make day 2, it's still only $500, which, given the hotel costs, the flight costs, all those kind of things, if you then have to pay another $1,000 on top of it, you're talking about not covering your PTI you had to buy with the winnings from the tournament, even if you do very well. And if you do badly, then, which you're likely to do if you have to buy a PTI rather than get one yourself, you're not going to get anything from it. So £1,000 is definitely too steep. I reckon, and I think that PTIs will settle at around $200, $250. Expensive in terms of a pricey concert ticket, expensive in terms of a calling ticket costing $100 for all the add-ons and bells and whistles, where you're not paying someone not to go. And this is very important. If you had to pay someone not to go so that you could go, it will be worth more money. If there are people who are just reselling things for things they can't go to, then it's worth much, much more reasonable amount. Because basically you can say, I'm buying this from you because you're never going to use it. I'm not buying this from you because you want to use it, and I have to make you not want to use it and give it to me instead. And I think that's an important distinction. So don't buy a PTI from someone who, wants to go and you have to convince them not to and to give it to you instead. Find someone from a country who, is never going to travel to America. PTI doesn't matter to them that much. And just talk to them about it and say, look, I really want to go, and offer them a reasonable amount of money, £200 or something like that. just to guarantee you don't have to grind go seems like a reasonable amount. So I think it's interesting that discussion is going on. I think by making them giftable, LSS has probably foreseen that this would happen. But I think that part of LSS's plan for this year is to soak up a certain amount of those free PTIs that can be used for any event and basically reduce the number in the world so that the amount of people coming to Worlds is a lot more controllable and the amount of people who are coming to each specific Pro Tour is a lot more controllable because there's not as many of these sort of open-ended invitations and things like that that people can take. So it's kind of probably part of the plan for the year. That's kind of it, really. I mean, I will be at this event, so if you want to meet me there, feel free. I'll be wearing a t-shirt saying Steelfur, probably with a great big British flag on the side of it, so that's really fun. And, you know, it's going to be a really great event. I'm very excited to take part in part of Fab's history in the making, as it will. And I'm sure that a load of people will come as well for the first Pro Tour. And, you know, if I do well, I'll be milking that on the channel for years. So hope that I do well, because it's going to be a lot of fun. In terms of future videos, obviously I've got a bit of a review of Everfest coming in, though, as you all know, I don't like to go through it card by card. But there are certain favourite classes of mine, like Runeblade, like Ninja, who I do want to sit down and go through the cards and talk about possible options for them before I get into the proper, like, in the weeds deck building, deck testing environment. I will probably have some, like, early decks for people to look at and review. Most of them won't be, you know, groundbreaking. I do believe in iteration rather than breaking the chain, but I am going to do something fun with Break Tide, I think, and I'm going to be doing something fun with Ninja in that regard. And that's it, really. So, of course, as always, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you're still listening and you haven't subscribed, then I don't know what to say to you. It's been half an hour. You know, you clearly like the sound of my voice, so you just hit that subscribe button and we'll sort it out later on. Other than that, I do still, of course, have my my Ko-fi page, which is linked below the video if anyone wants to support my channel. I will be, this year, putting a bit more work in to just add in some more deck text, add in some more off-the-books thoughts that I haven't really put into a video yet for people in my Ko-fi page. But mostly, it is just for those people who really feel like they want to support me and sort of make my day, we'll say week, month, year, how it depends how much you give me. But generally, it is just a sign that I'm doing a good job and you're enjoying what you're listening to. Yeah, aside from that, have a great week and I will speak to you all soon.